We both know you're here because you're trying to find a kicker to replace your tight end production in fantasy football. And lucky for you, there's lots of kickers that are doing that right now. So make sure to go down there, drop a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. And let's go ahead and get into Tier 1 right now. We've got Cama Fairbairn versus the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay this week. This has one of the highest over-unders in fantasy football this week. There should be plenty of fantasy points available. And the thing with Cama Fairbairn is he's just been really freaking good in fantasy football. Like, Cama Fairbairn right now is averaging 12 fantasy points per game. Wouldn't you kill to have a tight end that was averaging 12 fantasy points per game? Well, the good news is he's available in kicker form. That's what he morphed into, and his name's Cama Fairbairn. This guy is really accurate. He's only missed 2 field goals this year, and he's got the leg to kick it long. And the good thing is the Texans, without their big play threat, a lot of times they're going to stall out in drives. Like, we saw him have a really good game last week without Nico Collins here. So I just have the same faith that Cama Fairbairn does the exact same thing versus the Green Bay Packers this week. And I've got Younghoe Koo at number 2 here versus the Seattle Seahawks. Younghoe Koo is an absolute stud as well. Younghoe Koo, again, he had that one game where he missed 2 kicks. And Younghoe Koo, other than that, been really lights out. Including the game winner, the guy's averaging 11.7 fantasy points per game. This guy has been really, really good. And again, this is a good matchup here for a kicker because the Atlanta Falcons, their offense is so set up to where they have all these weapons, but still they're not always getting down there and scoring touchdowns on a consistent basis here. What they're doing a lot of times is they're getting down there in range to kick field goals. That's why he's getting more field goal attempts than extra point attempts here. So Younghoe Koo continues to have that same level of upside against another weaker defense versus the Seattle Seahawks. At number 3, we've got Austin Seibert. This guy has been a freaking revelation versus the Carolina Panthers this week. First of all, it reminds me of what the Detroit Lions were like last week. When I said leading into the week, I don't think we're going to see the Lions punter more than like 3 times. I think the very same thing about the Commanders punter this week. I don't think we're going to see him more than 3 times. I think that's max right here. Austin Seibert with the Commanders, already they don't punt very much, and especially with the Panthers on the block, they're not going to punt much at all. And this guy's only missed 1 kick this year, and he's got a 55-yard long. So we know this guy can kick bombs. He's averaging 13.4 fantasy points per game. That is incredible. That's your running back 2, wide receiver 2 right there. So Austin Seibert has been lights out. I expect him to continue that trend here versus the Carolina Panthers at home. Dropping down to our next tier right here. Harrison Butker has been a great fantasy kicker sans Rashee Rice. That's the one positive thing that we got out of the Rashee Rice injury is that, Harrison Butker became a top-tier kicker in fantasy football. We obviously know that Harrison Butker has the leg to get the job done, right? The guy's kicked a 53-yard long this year. He's missed a couple kicks this year, which is not typical Harrison Butker, which is making it a little bit concerning here. But the week without Rashee Rice, in week 5 in particular, 14 fantasy points because their offense is getting down there. And especially when they're taking on a good defense, they're stalling because they don't have the firepower to be able to get in consistently when they're in the red zone. That's what gives Harrison Butker the edge over a lot of these more efficient offenses with kickers, right? Harrison Butker, this offense is less efficient. The matchup versus San Francisco is going to be a tough one, but you can always expect the Kansas City Chiefs to score points. That's why Harrison Butker's at number 4. Will Reichard at number 5, the Minnesota Vikings kicker. He's been great as well. Versus Detroit this week, Will Reichard, I don't know if he's a great kicker yet or if he's just been on a product of a great offense, but it's kind of hard to argue with the numbers that he's doing right now. He has not missed a kick this year, and he's got a 58-yard long, so the guy's got a freaking leg. 10 fantasy points per game because the offense is just moving at a super, nobody's stopped them yet. I don't know who can stop them. The Lions defense is going to be weaker without Aiden Hutchinson as well. That's the problem that I see here with the Lions defense is that without a consistent pass rush, these offenses are going to be able to slice up that defense even better because their secondary is already the weakness of their entire team. So I think that Will Reichard ends up kicking a bunch more extra points this week. I think it's going to be a shootout, though, to where you just want points in this matchup, and Will Reichard is obviously going to be a big portion of that. Justin Tucker at number 6 to round it out. It's really funny. Justin Tucker started out the year really, really cold, and he's had a very good string of games here the last 2 weeks. 13 fantasy points in week 5, 13 again in week 6. And again, he's taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa on Monday night. So this is a matchup that I particularly like because Lamar Jackson's record versus the NFC is so strong. Now, obviously, that applies to Justin Tucker because it's going to give them so many scoring options here that even if he ends up kicking 5 extra point attempts and only 2 field goals, that's still in line for a really good fantasy week. So regardless of which way it goes, one way or the other, Tucker's getting a little bit more accurate again. He kind of had some misses at the beginning. I like Justin Tucker quite a bit this week to round out tier 2. And going down to tier number 3, I've got whoever the 49ers kicker is going to be. I have no idea whether it's going to be Anders Carlson, Matthew Wright, or Jake Moody. I'm sticking with Anders Carlson's face right now on the tiers, as you can see, because the 49ers have been ravaged with injuries, and it goes down to their freaking kicker. I mean, literally, it's so crazy. Jake Moody dealing with a high ankle sprain. Then Matthew Wright, he screws up his shoulder. He pops his shoulder out of place somehow. I don't even think it was football related. I think it was not football related. But he comes in, he has a good game against the Seahawks last week on Thursday night. Well, now he's questionable. So they signed Anders Carlson to the practice squad. I have no idea what's going on. What are they putting in San Francisco's water? Any San Fran natives can tell me that one, because it's not looking good with kickers down here. So with Anders Carlson, if he plays, again, the matchup is so good for fantasy football purposes because Kansas City's defense is strong. So they're going to be able to hold San Fran to field goals. And I think that whoever kicks for them this week, I don't care which one of them it is, obviously we prefer Jake Moody, but the reality is he's probably the least likely of the options to play this week. So whoever it is this week, I want in on them, and that's why they're all listed here at number 7. And at number 8, I've got Evan McPherson of the Cincinnati Bengals at the Cleveland Browns this week. Now, I think this one might be a little bit similar to last week here, where Evan McPherson is just going to have sort of limited opportunities to be able to capitalize on a bunch of attempts, right? Because Evan McPherson is already kicking more extra points than field goals. He's missed 3 kicks this year, which is not fantastic. But last week, he didn't score that much on the Giants. And while the Browns have been a pretty good play, they're looking a little bit better recently defensively. So maybe this is a good week, maybe it's a bad week. I do know this. Divisional matchups are always sketchy. And so there's not exactly a clear-cut answer here for me personally about whether Evan McPherson hits this week or not. I like him. He's done well in fantasy. He's on a good offense, but the Cleveland matchup does scare me a little bit. That's why he's down here at 8. And Chris Boswell is down here at 9 because I'm very, very afraid of this one. Listen, I had my whole week planned out. I was going to make some good videos, and we were all going to enjoy ourselves knowing that the Steelers' defense was going to be good and Justin Fields was going to be another good play. Well, then Mike Tomlin shows just how tone-deaf he is offensively, which I've known for years, by saying, yeah, we're going to play Russell Wilson this week, and it has nothing to do with Justin Fields and how he plays. It's like, dude, what are you doing? So Justin Fields goes to the bench. Russell Wilson comes in. And for those of you who are wondering whether or not this offense is better or worse with Russell, I'll tell you for a fact it's not going to be better. Russell Wilson was right down there with Kenny Pickett as far as adjusted yards per pass attempt last year. He doesn't push the ball down the field. So if anything, this hurts Chris Boswell. Because I think they're going to have infrequent trips to the red zone against a defense that's really mad because they kind of got embarrassed a little bit the last couple of weeks here. Again, this Jets defense on Sunday night in Pittsburgh, they should be able to move the ball if it was Justin Fields, but I don't trust Russell Wilson to be able to move this ball as consistently. So Chris Boswell's down here at 9, although of course I do see them getting 3 more field goal attempts in this game. I'm definitely not as sure about Chris Boswell in this game, but I tell you one thing I am sure of in this game is Aaron Rodgers getting more than half a yard. That's his projection right now on Underdog. So you obviously need to hit the higher on this one. And if you haven't taken advantage of Underdog yet, go down in the comments, grab the link that's there, and when you use code FN to sign up for Underdog, not only will they match your first deposit 50% up to $1,000 bonus cash, but you'll also be able to get in on the sweat-free projection that Aaron Rodgers possesses this week. Dropping down to our last tier, Joshua Carty of the Los Angeles Rams versus the Las Vegas Raiders this week. Listen, this matchup is just so juicy. I can't reasonably put a Rams kicker outside of this one. I just think they're going to move the ball at will. They're coming off a bye week here. They're getting Cooper Kupp back this week in all likelihood. So that means that they're just going to be able to move the ball better against the Raiders defense that already looks really clownish. This defense is so embarrassing that I ever had them in my top 12 because they're so bad. Their offense can't move the ball, which already hurts their defense, and the defense just isn't very good outside of like Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins. So this team is just a disaster, and I think that the Rams have an easy time moving the ball, and Joshua McCarty on a per kick basis is not been a bad player. He's missed 2 kicks, but he's also kicked a 52-yard long, and he is kicking more field goals than he is extra points this year so far. Number 11, Will Lutz tonight versus the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans here. Will Lutz has been a top 12 kicker for most of the year this year. Will Lutz has been, almost deadly accurate, 51-yard long. And Will Lutz, again, this offense is really unique because they're quarter to quarter, they're a different offense. Sometimes they put up a lot of points, sometimes they don't, and sometimes they look like crap. So it's really hard to tell what Will Lutz's upside will be tonight against a stiffer defense. But this defense with New Orleans doesn't have an offense. Like, not only is it Spencer Rattler again, but their star receivers are both out. Olave and Rashid Shaheed, they're out. So it's Alvin Kamara or bust for this offense here. That makes this Saints defense more susceptible to big drives, and I think that's where Will Lutz comes in, is able to kick a couple field goals, get out of here, get you like 8 or 9 fantasy points. Jason Myers at number 12 to round it all out. At the Atlanta Falcons this week, Jason Myers is just on a really good offense for a fantasy football kicker, and while he has not done fantastic yet, one of the things that I've noticed, especially last week against the 49ers, is that they were playing catch-up in that game, so it was like, they were kind of going forward on 4th down quite a bit, but if you go back to that Giants game, he had 10 fantasy points, right? So this guy does kick a lot of field goals because this offense, with all the talent in the world, stalls out near the end zone. They stall out in the red zone because they're just not good enough in red zone capitalization. So with Jason Myers, I see the same type of thing here against the Atlanta Falcons. They're going to have to keep up in this game because Atlanta's going to put up points against their defense. So I see Jason Myers being a really good play this week. So let me know how your lineup is looking for this week. And if you want to see the top 12 defenses in fantasy football this week, click on this video right here.